Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
In a week where Manchester United once again remembers and pays tribute to the victims of the Munich Air Disaster, to those young footballers, the Busby Babes who left the world in awe of their skill, it's been wonderful to see their legacy carried forward by a new generation. Goals scored by Marcus Rashford and Scott McTominay, 2 from Alejandro Garnacho, but the one that stands out is another. Kobbie Mainoo, Stockport born, trained first at the Cliff on the ground where the Babes did exactly the same, and then at Carrington and Old Trafford. 18 years old and scoring a 97th minute winner for United with the deftness of touch of Zidane and a confident celebration of Ronaldo. That's probably enough hype for now. A very warm welcome to the Manchester United Weekly Podcast with me, Harry Robinson and Jack Tait. On today's show, we review a 3-0 win over West Ham, reflect on Molineux midweek drama and discuss the enduring legacy of the Munich Air Disaster on the club today. We play Guess the Player, give you an extensive academy briefing, including 2 victories and loan news and a high-profile departure. We update you on the latest result for United women and preview the men's first team's away match at Aston Villa in the Premier League. United looking for another win on the road. Let's begin. Comfortable, reassuring, plenty of joy and hope. I wouldn't say it was in-your-face inspiring, and I wouldn't say it banished the many fears around this team, the manager and the future of that relationship, but this was very much a relaxing Sunday afternoon's victory and so on to say for Jack, wasn't it?
Once the second goal went in, very much so. I thought it was a game that in the first half could have panned out very differently, but once Garnacho got that deflected, second goal coming right off the back of Emerson missing that huge chance, which, by the way, was an absolute howler, the way he went about trying to put that in. It became very comfortable. After that, having just conceded a 2-goal lead, albeit obviously still winning the game against Wolves a few days earlier, I thought United did really well to control the game once that second goal went in. It's actually a skill that we haven't seen United use much at all this season, partially because we haven't had many 2-goal leads, but when we haven't protected them very well. Look at Copenhagen game, look at Spurs earlier on in the season. There's been a lot of occasions where, we've played well, but we haven't either put the ball in the back of the net enough to get into this position, or when we've let this slip. And so I thought the control that we showed was very good, and it was lovely to get towards the end of a game, especially a home game, and not feel not feel too worried about what was going to happen.
Yeah, but should we tackle that? Because look, it's one game, isn't it? And we can reference Wolves as well because we didn't record immediately after that. That was a case of us, were it not for the individual late brilliance of Mainoo, would have been us throwing away a very good performance and sacrificing a win for a draw. You then look at West Ham, and as you say, they had chances. The difference was not, I know it felt more comfortable than many others, and in the end, we kept the clean sheet. But you're still relying on, and I don't want to bring a massive down on things, but you're relying on an extraordinary Diogo Dalot block, which came out of absolutely nowhere. I was astonished by that. And I'm not sure you would have seen, watching on TV, maybe on the replay, a second angle, but he was miles away. That felt like such a certain goal. And that's why it drew such an amazing reception for the crowd. A clinical finish from Garnacho, which, as you said, we haven't been clinical enough at finishing off chances. That's one of the other reasons we've not been able to kill off games. This time, Garnacho was a bit of fortune with the deflection, but his second goal was a great finish. And he and many others have messed up those chances in other games. And we still had, a few times where West Ham broke. We also still saw Ten Hag, even at 3-0, bringing on a centre-back as a late sub, it always confuses me, and he did that against Wolves and it didn't go particularly well there either. So was this different, or was just the result different? What do you think? Because I know it felt different, and especially in Old Trafford there was still the nervousness, but you had, where we haven't had before, you had those waves of attack which are when when United are playing well, because one attack goes and then it goes back to centre back and you come again and you get this. That's that when people talk about the Stretford end, like sucking the ball into net, that's, I think, what they're talking about when it's that wave of attack and eventually it ends up in a goal. So it felt different, but was it? What did you think?
I think the first half was quite similar to a lot of what we've seen for the rest of the season, really. I don't think we ever had that much control of the game. West Ham, I don't think we've definitely played worse and had opponents all over us more at home than than West Ham were in the first half of this game. But I don't think we had great control. Even the first goal, it wasn't against the run of play necessarily, but it felt like a fairly even game. West Ham had a few chances of their own. Every time the ball went out for a corner or they got a free kick, it was massive panic stations. It seemed like, it's obviously a huge source of their goals.
And again, that's something we are really poor at, and this season has cost us so much, is giving away set pieces. Corners, I don't mind. When you defend, you're going to give away corners. Obviously, you can try and give away fewer, but that's generally, that's when you're trying to block a shot, and there's less you can do.
And we did sort that out.
Free kicks.
We did sort that out to some degree in the second half, giving fewer of them away. But in the first half, giving Ward-Prowse an opportunity to shoot from 25 yards in the middle of the goal, it's criminal.
Yeah.
So I don't think the first half was that different from what we've seen, but the second half, I really do. Even before the goal, I thought we started the second half well. Obviously, they had that huge chance with Emerson and the other one from Bowen later on, but they were two sort of more freak moments rather than being reflective of West Ham having any sort of sustained attacks.
Yep.
And it did feel like in the second half, there were moments where United, we really weren't giving West Ham a sniff. The thing in the first half, you mentioned about the Stretford end sucking the ball into the net, which definitely does happen at times at United. I think the thing that you can sort of point to as evidence that this wasn't that different in the first half to other times during the season was, I don't know how widespread this was, Harry. It might have just been in a section of the ground that was being picked up a lot on TV, but you could hear a lot of groans in the first half as United slowed things down. I actually don't think we were doing the wrong thing. West Ham was sitting off us a lot and we were trying to sort of force them to come onto us to create a little bit more space. But at times when like Kobbie Mainoo, Casemiro, Martinez were on the ball and really slowing things down on TV, you could hear groans and complaints from the crowd that we weren't moving the ball quick. We didn't have enough urgency. So I don't think the first half was that massively different to some of the performances that we've seen in the last few months.
Yeah. I don't think I noticed that around me, but I think the time where I felt that personally, I believe it happened. It wasn't so noticeable around me. I think when I felt that was actually at 3-0 up, where we're slowing things down. And I think, I don't know, it's as often the case with my opinions, a romantic view of football in United. But I thought, especially on a day where the closest game to the anniversary of Munich, like the thing that inspired everyone in that Busby's team was that they went out to entertain. And that was what he always told his players. And that was the point. You're there to entertain the fans who have paid their money, who work on the shop floor and whatever. And at the end, the final 5 minutes, and I know they've had quite a busy couple of weeks and under a lot of pressure, and they probably just wanted to relax. But the final 5 or 10 minutes, you thought, come on, lads, go for it. You've got your confidence together now. Go for it and try and make this 4 or 5. And there was that a bit lacking, but that is, But I was going to say that's high standards, but that's exactly what there should be at United. So I think Sir Alex wouldn't have been happy with we kind of took our foot off the pedal late on. But yeah, overall very good. And there were so many positives. And Rasmus Hojlund's goal is the first one we should talk about, because bloody hell, that was brilliant. And the confidence to take it on, but also you notice the confidence in all his other celebrations of all the goals, even at Newport, which made it 4-2. That was a celebration of relief. And this one was just replaced by kind of a prepared idea. It shows that he's relaxed, and it's not surprising. He's been involved in goals in, I think, every game since Boxing Day when he got his first one in the Premier League. It's fantastic. And the strike of that goal on his weak foot is a tasty sign of what's to come.
I've got to be honest, I've been struggling more and more every game not to get overexcited about Rasmus Hojlund. He's great, and his performances have been great throughout the year, and you could see his confidence really starting to dip. We talked about this in sort of end of November, start of December sort of time, that you could see as his confidence was dipping a little, his performances were dropping off. He wasn't as involved. And he's still not the kind of striker that's going to play like Roberto Firmino and have 100 touches a game, but we don't need him to be that. He's still, when he is involved, he's dropping deep, he's laying the ball back and spinning in behind. His movement is still very good. And you're starting to see some of that clinical nature to his finishing. Now, I think what we're seeing at the moment is a little bit of regression to the mean. I think he had the bad side of some luck in the first half of the season where there's a lot of goals that he should have scored that he probably shouldn't, and vice versa. He's scoring some goals now that in other days wouldn't go in. But I think overall, I think he's up to around 10 goals for the season
10
now.
exactly, yep.
Obviously, a lot of those came in the Champions League, and he's been on a great run. And with some proper service, which has improved massively since Garnacho has moved to right wing, he's thriving, absolutely thriving. He's so exciting. He just turned 21, and everything that you're seeing are really positive signs. There's nothing more exciting to me in football than having a young striker that looks like they could be going places. And United, when was the last time United had a striker? It would be Lukaku, but obviously was only here for a couple of seasons. Before that, you'd have to go back to Wayne Rooney, really, to the last time United had a young-ish striker who was really developing and could become something great. Obviously had a lot of older strikers in the last decade or so.
That's very true. And I think you're starting to see him relax in interviews now as well.
Yeah.
And I'm so pleased about that because I did his first interview when he signed for United, and you can tell when you look in someone's eyes. And there were a few things I took from that. One, that he properly was a United fan and loved it. Because, a lot of people say, I've always wanted to play for United. But when you're looking him in the eyes, you could tell or not. And he meant it. And he was just desperate to get to Old Trafford. And he's obviously loving playing for the club. But also, the confidence beneath comes out a bit on the surface. But, when you can tell someone's just so sure of themselves. And he was in the way that he walked around and spoke to people and the things that he said. And his mentality is absolutely there, and credit to him because it was a really hard first few months, and this was not the situation he was meant to be in. I don't think he was signed as to be immediately United's main striker. He's had to do that all the while with loads of other stuff going around him, not even a settled front line because of the stuff with Anthony and then Jadon Sancho, then Marcus Rashford. So all of this, we should give credit to Garnacho in that he has been settled. Laurie Whitwell pointed out after the West Ham game, Garnacho's now started 19 games in a row. Very quietly, no one seems to notice, but that's amazing. So credit to him as well. But I'm just really happy for Hojlund, and as you say, it's very exciting. This is a top player, and everyone would have seen that picture, Garnacho celebration with Hojlund and Mainoo.
That is the future.
What do we want as football fans? Basically, hope. And so when you're looking at a season, and the reason that this season feels so down is because that hope's been missing even in the good moments. So that when you've had, say, Scott McTominay's incredible double against Brentford, everyone is absolutely buzzing because it's incredible. That's what you go to the football for, is those just ridiculous moments where all the air seems to leave your body and then you're floating on a cloud for days after. But there was that underlying factor of that was another terrible performance. I feel buzzing, but not hopeful. Those three players, Hojlund, Garnacho and Mainoo, how can you not be optimistic about them? All three of them are incredible for different reasons and are showing themselves to be really likeable as well. So that's, it's enjoyable.
Yeah, massively. Look, and obviously Man United have an even more special relationship to the youth team than most clubs do. But even at any club, I don't think there's any feeling like seeing, especially attacking players come through the academy, making match-winning interventions. It's brilliant. Like you said, it's exactly why we watch football, why we love it, for those kind of moments where you just think, this is everything that my club is about, everything that I want from this club. A player that you can sort of relate to, that you can see has come through from the club from such a young age and is now thriving on the biggest possible stage. I mean, Kobbie Mainoo's winner against Wolves is one of the best moments I can remember as a United fan, honestly. And it's just in the middle of a season, a random game on a Thursday night at Molineux in just a regular Premier League game. But the meaning that goal seemed to carry was huge. And I feel like it's been such an odd season in so many ways because we've actually had loads of moments like that. Like you said, you mentioned the McTominay against Brentford. We've had the Onana last-minute penalty save against Copenhagen. So many other late winners. And yet it feels like we haven't really been able to enjoy them because invariably we've followed them up with terrible losses.
Which is why this week feels good.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we can come on here and actually still revel in what we saw from Kobbie Mainoo and other young players stepping up and getting, you know, brilliant goals and match-winning performances against West Ham, because we've actually won a couple of games in a row. And it feels like some shoots of recovery are there, even if I still think there's a long way to go for this team. That it's just, you're able to enjoy what are some of the things that we all want the most out of any season, any game of football, is to see players that we love and are invested in making, you know, match-winning moments.
Yeah, and the presence of Mainoo and Garnacho, and Mainoo coming up big with some goal scoring there, but Garnacho also now in real scoring form is obviously partly why Hojlund can thrive more. I was looking for a different reason, but I've just gone back to my notes from our second episode of Series 9, which was just after Hojlund signed, and I was going back for a different reason, which I'll come on to, but I've got a couple of notes to say about what kind of United need to provide to make him successful. And one of the key points, as is obvious, is that United needed goal scoring from the rest of the team to take the pressure off him a bit, because the pressure was too big, and we felt very much one goal scorer short. And that has obviously been the case. We scored so few goals this season. We needed Rashford to maintain or better his contribution. That obviously hasn't happened. And then you needed big improvements from Garnacho, Sancho, Anthony. The latter two obviously haven't done that. We wanted Mason Mount to provide a few. He hasn't done that. Garnacho has stepped up now, and Hojlund stepped up. But you also have got the return of Casemiro into midfield, and that helps Kobbie Mainoo to look good. So there's lots of factors that are behind this form improving. The other reason I was going back to my notes, because I remember us having a conversation about how many we expected Hojlund to score. And because you said, as you pointed out, that's 10 goals now. You're looking for a debut season, you're looking at 17 is very good. That's what Martial achieved. That's what Wayne Rooney achieved. Rooney in his second season, even in 48 games, scored 19 goals. It was only in his third season that he broke that kind of career-defining 20-goal mark. So if Hojlund continues like this, you'd hope he would get another 7 goals this season. Then that's, despite the difficulties of early on, that's a very good return.
I mean, that would be brilliant. To be honest, I think if we go back to the very beginning of the season, I think you would have said 15 goals would have been a really good start.
That's what I think I was checking. I can't actually find what we said, but I think we both said 15 would be
as a 20-year-old striker, your first season in the Premier League. You know, Hojlund admitted in the interview after the Wolves game, he said, you know, he's taken some time to get used to playing in the Premier League. Everything is faster and a little bit more physical. And I sometimes forget, because I'm not used to United having such a young striker and also such a young player playing every single game as he is being forced to at the moment. He's been 20 years old. He just turned 21. You know, this is a player that has so much time still to develop. And he isn't a Wayne Rooney
he's younger
type.
Than like Joe Hugo.
Yeah. Well, and he also isn't, like, there are some players like Wayne Rooney, for example, or even Garnacho, what he's doing now, who they've been playing first team football in Rooney's case since he was 16, in Garnacho's case since he just turned 18, and they're playing almost every week. Hojlund wasn't that. You know, he's really only had 1 year in really top level leagues, for half a season in Austria, then again in Atalanta. You know, he's still fairly inexperienced at the top level, and so he's still going to be learning every single game. I think what he's shown in the last month has been so positive. I'm really, really excited about what the future could hold for him. I think he's got a really good all-round game, and I really do think that Garnacho deserves a lot of credit for his role in that too, because I think his switch to the right wing, I mean, we spoke about it recently, that I think it was even last week, we said, you know, more focused on Rashford, and that can he be the kind of player that puts a lot of chances on a plate for Hojlund? But, you know, Garnacho has very much taken over that mantle. He's been a chance creation machine since he moved to the right wing, and actually really developed his game a lot in a way that, to be honest, I didn't think he could, playing on the right. Yeah,
the question for him is, can he continue to improve how he influences the game when it's a bit more compact?
Yeah.
He's obviously incredible on the transition, as Rashford was when he was younger. Rashford last season showed an ability to beat people in tight spaces and to influence games when teams were sitting back. I don't think Garnacho has that yet. He may be able to have that like someone like Antony should have, or like most very good players by kind of long range shots, but that's not really what you're looking for. Strangely enough, you're looking for the kind of stuff that Jadon Sancho could do but wasn't doing enough of at United, which is the relationships with fullbacks and strikers and midfielders to play in tight areas, something that Antony can be good at but just isn't doing enough of. So I think that's probably one of the areas for Garnacho to develop his game, but I'm just really confident he will, because he's obviously him. It's funny, isn't it? For all the criticism we gave to Cristiano Ronaldo when he was here during the second spell, or in his second season, that second spell, and rightly so, but you are now seeing the generation coming through who idolised Ronaldo, and the mentality is incredible. And like the direct impact of Ronaldo's mentality and the way he spoke about it on Garnacho and Hojlund, two players who idolised him, like you can see it. And so there's going to be a lot more of these coming through, which I think is interesting. Because I guess when the previous idols, so I guess kind of because you're a couple of years older than me, Rude, Ronaldinho, Kaká, would that be right?
Yeah.
They were incredible players, but the discussion was always on their skill rather than the mentality. Whereas now everything with Ronaldo is about that mental strength, and players have learnt off that. So it's pretty cool. There is one major downside, isn't there? Lisandro Martinez, and this is just as United are starting to get into a groove, and as we've been waiting for players to come back and see. I don't think we've seen enough yet to suggest that Ten Hag has done enough this season so far. There's still time, but as he was saying, and as everyone was saying, when the good players came back, it would make things a lot easier and United to start winning. But just as we get into a groove, you get potentially Martinez out for several weeks, maybe the season. Ten Hag sounded pretty negative, pretty pessimistic. So it's such a shame.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, you'd already seen in the couple of games that he'd been back how important Martinez is to us. I feel just so awful for him if it is as serious as it looked like it could be. Look, I'm not an injury expert by any means. I'm, to be honest, quite confused at how serious the injury could be at this stage. It at first looked horrifically bad, the way that he went down and the way he was clutching his knee, and the reaction of other players as they came over. The fact that he was then able to get up and come back on for a few minutes sort of calmed me down, and he did walk off under his own power. But I've seen people with very serious knee injuries walk off themselves before.
Yeah,
the adrenaline.
My mate tore his ACL, MCL, and his meniscus, and carried on playing a game of rugby for ages. Adrenaline would make you do
crazy things.
Well, yeah, and his physio told him he was fine, which was a fairly major mistake. But I don't think United will have the same problem as that.
Yeah, let's hope.
I hope. But yeah, you've seen his influence. He's one of those core pieces, isn't he?
Yeah.
Of Martinez, Shaw, Casemiro, and
he makes
Hojlund probably.
He makes other people better and more comfortable too, because if he can come in and be sort of that basic, the sort of warrior type at centre back who's really in your face and will step out with forwards, it leaves someone like Maguire or Varane also able to not have to do that role, and they can play on the right hand side of defence.
The mentality. We were saying 2 months ago, a month ago, where is all that passion in defence gone? And it's back. You're seeing them now celebrate tackles, and I know there'll be cynics who say, "Oh, why are they doing that?" But that was part of the kind of good feeling around United last season, was that there was intensity to everything we did, and seeing Martinez is the key.
Yeah, I remember really the turning point of last season when we beat Liverpool at home. It was him clattering into Salah after 30 seconds that kind of set the tone in that game, and Dalot did it. Well, I think Martinez did it actually with, was it Firmino, and Dalot did it to Salah, but it was Martinez coming in and setting that tone, as he did in pretty much every game, that it carried us through a lot of those games last season. Yeah.
So we'll wait and see, but a real shame. Concerningly, could have a massive impact on the rest of it. When we've just been speaking about hope, suddenly it's kind of halved because you think without his influence, this team can struggle.
I mean, you've also just got to hope moving forward that both of these injuries that Martinez has had have been kind of freak accidents. One is his foot got stuck in the turf at Old Trafford against Sevilla, and then this one, it was Soufal landing on him in an awkward way. That doesn't suggest that at this point any worries about, is he going to become a very injury-prone player? He hasn't been throughout his career, and it's not like he's, tearing muscles left, right and centre like Martial, for example.
No, but the concern is, as someone, I can't remember who raised on the United We Stand Forum, is he the type of player that gets injured a lot because he's so intense and aggressive and committed to every tackle, but is small? Does that put him at risk to injury? And sometimes does he need to not go into challenges where it's not essential because he might get injured, such as this one, which was by the corner flag and probably wasn't necessary. I don't know whether that's fair or not. I need to watch that tackle back because I actually haven't seen it back. But
some breaking news as we're recording. Fabrizio Romano just tweeted that it's not an ACL for Martinez and that United hope to have him back after the international break in March. So a month and a half, 2 months. Okay. It looks like it. I feel like that's a sort of middle of the road. It could have been a lot worse, but it could have been a lot better.
Yeah, not great.
I had some real worries it was a season ender when it happened.
Yeah, but at the moment, United have promised a lot of players coming back, and then they've not come back for months after, like Mason Mount or Malacia.
Well, and Martinez himself, obviously, re-injuring the toe.
So, we'll see. Let's have guest to player clue 1, please. You're setting for me this week 3 clues on a past or present Manchester United player or member of staff. The quicker you get it, the more points you get. Jack setting for me this week, so please fire away.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Okay, so first clue, quite simply, is I moved on loan from United to Borussia Dortmund.
Oh, I might have it already.
Okay. We'll save it and we'll come back to it later.
Yeah. I'm going to have a think for what. Yeah, I'll think while we come back to it in case I've misremembered that completely. But yeah, I might have it. Okay. Let's talk about Munich, the club remembering the Munich Air Disaster and the victims of it this week. I thought it'd be nice to talk about kind of what it means to us. I remember when I started doing some freelance work for United, the editor of the magazine said we'd be able to do something on what Munich means to you, given not only were you not alive for it, as most United fans weren't, but like your parents wouldn't have been alive for it either. And yet it holds this incredible resonance with supporters, young as well as old. And it does. It's such a core part of the club's identity, and I think our identity as fans. Is that something you've always felt too?
Yeah, massively. I was lucky enough to be at the 50th anniversary of the Munich Air Disaster at the derby at Old Trafford, where us and City both wore jerseys replicating what they looked like back in 1958. And it's just something that I think stays with you every time you watch United and every time this time of year comes around. I mean, the story of it and how the club was rebuilt is quite incredible, and it's something that I think I actually give the institution of Man United quite a lot of credit for, I think, retaining a lot of the spirit and values that were created around that time throughout everything. We've said plenty of times on here that I think what keeps us connected to this club is a feeling that it is somehow a little different and more of a family and sort of an inward focused club in some ways that has been sort of ground away at over the last 15 years or so. But games like this with academy products coming in and scoring and being huge players for Man United and seeing Old Trafford in raptures like that, it kind of reminds you of why you do all of this, why you care so much, and why all these players fight for the badge in the way that they do. I don't think that the Munich Air Disaster and the values that came from it are something that we just remember once a year and then forget about for the other 364 days. It does feel like it's something that runs through the fabric of the club at every turn.
Yeah, and because it still has it does have that legacy within the club. I've been doing a lot of work with the academy the last couple of years, and I've seen the under-13s, for example, their education, every age group has an education project as well as their school. The under-13s is Munich, so at the 65th anniversary last year, one of their players read out a poem he'd wrote at the memorial in Munich, which was pretty special. But I've been at one of those sessions with Jimmy Murphy Jr., son of Jimmy Murphy, and Roy Kavanagh, who's author of many United history books and a wonderful person and previous guest of this podcast. And hearing Roy talk about those players is just an absolute privilege. And those players were able to do that, those under-13s. It's at the core, but also when you travel around the world. And there was a good article in featuring United Review this week, the matchday programme, about a supporter from Belgrade who basically supported United because of the obvious connection between the city of Belgrade, the home of Red Star, who United played in the quarter-final before travelling home via Munich, and United. And you realise that enduring impact. There are so many Serbian supporters of United, Belgrade Reds. I visited Belgrade in the summer, and even not United fans, but the respect for the club is so great there, and it's lovely. And while not quite as strong as a connection as with that city, you get that familiar feeling all over travelling with United. And I think it is a leftover from that time and the disaster. And there's so many supporters that it's what turned United into a global club. And it's obviously come about in a tragic way, but I think that's probably what makes it different, is the fact that what made United global was this, and not just success, which came after 99. And the kind of two defining events of United's history are 58 and 99 in terms of getting that global support. The older generation supported United because of after Munich and the response and the 10-year kind of rise from the ashes, and the younger generation, most of them support United because they watched 99 and fell in love with the story. Two incredible stories. So yeah, you do feel its impact all the time, and there can definitely be some overdoing of things around Munich and people with mad tattoos and showing off how they've paid their respects. And I think most people would prefer kind of a quiet moment of reflection, but I do think, as you say, the club approached the remembrance really well on the whole, and things are done with class. And they do have some making up to do. They treated the survivors and the victims' families quite poorly in the years that came after. So any effort to remedy that is great. But yeah, I do think things are generally done with class, and it is always special being at Old Trafford. I'd have loved to be at the 2008 game, but it's special being at those games at any time when the Flowers of Manchester's played. And yeah, when you hear "We'll Never Die" ringing out around Old Trafford, especially on that, at any time, but especially on that game, it is pretty special. I've been doing some research around it as well for an article I'm doing for United Review, but I found an article I thought I'd share because I just thought it was a lovely story. I kind of related to what we're talking about. It's from the 7th of February 1958, and it starts like this. Instead of to the semi-finals, to death. With the speed of lightning, the tragic news of the Munich accident spread in Belgrade and throughout Yugoslavia. At first, nobody believed it, but later huge crowds of soccer fans came out on the streets. They gathered in front of the radio station and the news agencies to hear the latest news of the tragic crash and the destiny of their favourites, the Babes of Manchester United. Nobody spoke about the match, only about the tragic crash in Munich, in which the most eminent and attractive soccer team was involved. I won't read out the whole article, but this Yugoslav journalist writing for a British newspaper goes on to write with amazing emotion about having made friends with the players and with journalists like Tom Jackson from the MEN, George Follows from the Daily Herald, Archie Ledbrook from the Mirror, all of whom died as well. And he writes particularly poignantly about striker Tommy Taylor, making very close acquaintance with a young Red Star player, Sekula Rakc. And they made plans to go on holiday together on the Adriatic coast that summer. That's how strong their friendship was. And when Sekula Rakc found out, he supposedly wept like a little child. And he wasn't the only one who promised to go on holiday to Yugoslavia. Tom Jackson had done so as well with this journalist. And I don't know, it was something I hadn't read before, and really emphasised the kind of personal level of the disaster for so many. And then you visit Belgrade now and you see that enduring respect, and it is incredible. And yeah, I think you're right, Jack. Those values are what make United what it is. And I guess going back to reason for hope in the present day, it feels like the new partial ownership definitely respect those values and want to put them at the heart of what we do.
I mean, that was in some ways part of the appeal of having someone like not Dave Brailsford, of Jim Ratcliffe being either, as we thought initially, full owner or partial owner as it is now. In that, yes, he's a businessman and obviously his priorities at this point are quite far removed from being a kid growing up in Manchester and being a United fan. But I think you've got to have more faith in him to instill and sort of protect some of those values than you would the Glazers or really anyone else coming from, outside. It's just, and that's not, I live thousands of miles away from Old Trafford, so I'm not saying that you can't be a fan or you're less of a fan for not growing up in Manchester or anything like that. But I do think that having followed the team from childhood, it gives you a sort of different perspective and maybe a different sort of respect for what the club holds dear and what I think a lot of fans in Manchester, so especially match-going fans, really care about in terms of what they want the club to stand for. It's not just this relentless pursuit of success at the cost of everything else. Yes, it does need to be a relentless pursuit of success, but there are also some values to the club that should be held above that, or at the very least on par with that pursuit. So look at, so I've just been reading loads of newspapers from the days after. The response to United to Munich was not to go out and buy a whole new team. And there was an interesting comparison between an English journalist and an Italian journalist in 1958, because the whole Torino team was killed in, I think, either 1948 or 1949 in a disaster of even bigger consequences, because it was the entire team and staff and everyone. The only person who was left was the owner, actually, who'd missed out on the game for, I can't remember whether he was ill or something else. And they had to go out and buy loads of players. United did buy a couple. There was Stan Crowther from Aston Villa. 3 lads from Bishop Auckland came in on an amateur basis to play for the reserves. And there were a few, Ernie Taylor as well. There were a few, but there was a very clear message from the chairman, Harold Harman, and from Jimmy Murphy that yes, they would buy where necessary, but Shea Brennan steps in, Mark Pearson steps in, Bobby Harrop comes into the team, Freddie Goodwin, Ronnie Cope, and then obviously Bobby Charlton comes back, and then you start bringing through the next generation, Nobby Stiles, Alex Dawson comes into the team. The point was the faith in youth before allowed United to recover while staying true to those principles from before. And I think that's why it's so important. So you're absolutely right. I think that's the key message in the modern era. And it's hard, right? It's a hard balance, because everything that is happening in the game is sort of pushing you away from that. There is so much money involved. The need to win and to win now is so great. And both players and coaching staff and also people in higher offices of the club, like the owners and executives, will feel pressure to forget some of those things and to just go on a pursuit of success at all costs. And that's where the institution and sort of the institutional history of the club carries so much weight in sort of reining some of that in. And it's why I think United have always been a team that has thrived when there's been a lot of stability in the manager role, and when there has been a group that is maybe not primarily, but has a large proportion of the playing staff who have come through the academy and understand what it means to be a Man United player. We aren't a club like, say, a Chelsea who has thrived despite instability at various times. It's not who United is. I think this is part of it. It's because
we're terrible with instability.
Yeah. And, we've talked about this before, that it's a sort of strange anomaly that of the 2 big post-war periods of success in United, they've coincided with, or pretty much all of United's success post-war has come in 2 periods that have been defined by, one manager in each case, and obviously not the same group of players, but at various times during those eras, very stable groups of players.
And the lessons to learn from that related to this, but also what you were saying just at the start there, is if I was trying to convince the kind of modern executives at United of the importance for this, it's not that Busby didn't do these things just out of principle. It was a belief in long-term success. And so that's the argument for it in the modern day, is it's not just, oh, we want to win in a certain way. It was, he firmly believed. It's why there was a point where the United president, James Gibson, in the first few years of Busby being there, shouted at him one point and said, "Why, I'm giving you money, why won't you sign anyone?" And Busby said, "Because that's not how I want to do it. I want to create my own players and mould them and have a long-term successful youth system that is at the heart of the club." And that's why United could recover after Munich. And that's why that success, blighted by Munich though it may have been, and so it was only a few titles and one European Cup instead of what could have been 5 European Cups or whatever. But that's why success could last for so long. And it's exactly the same with Sir Alex. The first thing he comes in to do is change the culture, yes, but also to kind of revitalise that youth system, because it gives you long-term success by sticking to principles rather than short-term success that might then fall apart later on. So that's the modern argument for it, isn't it? And one I hope that Ineos will buy into. But yeah, we'll see on that front. Should we have anything else, or should we have guess the player clue 2?
No, I think you summed it up great.
Okay, clue 2. Oh, I might have to give you a guess. So I'm typing it into WhatsApp now, so you can go ahead with clue 2.
Okay, so clue 2 is, my only international goal came against England in the 2018 World Cup.
Okay, I think.
Has that made you more confident?
Not more confident, but it doesn't ruin my answer.
Okay.
You should have it now.
Yeah,
so
I do.
Can tell me. Okay, tell me if it's correct, but don't tell the listeners who it is.
You are correct.
Okay, fantastic. I can relax for clue 3 then. Clue 3 will come after the Patron Q&A and after an academy briefing, and then we'll be talking about the Aston Villa match away in the Premier League. So Patron Q&A for our patrons. If you want to join them, go to patreon.com/United Weekly Podcast, and an ad break for everyone else. It's time for the Academy briefing on the Manchester United Weekly Podcast, and let's begin with the first team, because in a week where the club has remembered and paid tribute to those young footballers, the Busby Babes, who left the world in awe of their skill, it has been wonderful to see that legacy carried forward by a new generation. Following goals from Marcus Rashford and Scott McTominay, midfielder Kobbie Mainoo came up big late on at Molineux, scoring a 97th minute winner to down Wolverhampton Wanderers. He was teed up for the goal by Mari Forson, 19, who was making his Premier League debut after 2 games in the FA Cup. The last 3 90th minute winning goals now in the Premier League by players aged 18 years old or younger have all come from graduates of United's academy. Marcus Rashford against Hull City in 2016, Alejandro Garnacho against Fulham in 2022, and now Kobbie Mainoo against Wolves in 2024. First team manager Erik ten Hag spoke of watching Mainoo for the first time last autumn, and he said, "I thought he was playing too comfortably in the under-21s and that he should be much more dominant, so we pushed him a lot." It's a powerful reminder that the headline-making moment everyone sees comes only after years of hard work. Ten Hag went on to say, "He's made such good progress, it is wonderful to see." I looked back at my notes from a year ago after reading those quotes from Ten Hag and was surprised, to be fair, to find this line where I'd written, "He did well starting against Charlton, but still needs lots of game time, which isn't guaranteed on loan. He's only 17, and while he's done very well in the under-21s, he's not completely dominating games, and there's much to learn by playing at that level." That, of course, did soon change, and I think Mainoo had the same step to make in the first team. His first few appearances were a good grounding, but timid in comparison to what we're seeing now. He really is controlling games, and his goal against Wolves was obviously special, but it did remind me of a lesser strike, but one that was sign of positive things to come in a friend against Cadiz in December last year. And this is what I wrote at the time for United We Stand. That goal against Cadiz would have been a real eye-opener into what kind of player we're talking about here. For those who haven't watched him much in the past, the shot was fine and needed a deflection to find the back of the net, but it was a few touches before that showed all you need to know about him. A left foot touch on the spin, 2 pieces of close control with his right, a larger punch forward to create space, and a left-footed shot. It's the variety of touches there that impresses, the speed at which he can pull the ball in and poke it out, all the while seeming in complete control. It's a good example of what he's about: technical quality in abundance, control and composure in tight spaces, balance and poise. It's that ball on a string quality that makes it clear that this is a player who has to feature high up the pitch. That doesn't mean he has to be a number 10, but whatever his midfield role going forward, he needs to have that freedom to thrive further up the pitch. He'll need to continue refining his strength and balance to cope with the hefty challenges of men's football. As for mentality, Kobbie seems well grounded. He speaks very well and takes things very seriously. Some young footballers will mess about during interviews or media training. Others will close up or be nervous. Kobbie does neither. He appears to have been ready for the attention he's getting for a long time, and that maturity shows on the pitch. He's unruffled by hard tackles and has a consistency to his performances that's always a positive sign at this age. I think that what I was writing there gives a good insight into the fact that what we're seeing now is nothing new, and that's why I'm looking back at these notes and saying it here, because I think it's a really positive sign that this is not a one-off or just a good spell of form. This is the foundations of this good form stretch back many, many years into the past. Later in the week, Alejandro Garnacho scored an Old Trafford double, reminiscent of that he scored in the 2022 FA Youth Cup final at the same ground to help United defeat West Ham 3-0 in the Premier League. Elsewhere in the competition, Jack Harrison scored for Everton, and fellow graduates Danny Welbeck at Brighton and Andres Pereira at Fulham contributed excellent assists. Down to the under-18s now, and there's been 2 games at Carrington in the last week and 2 wins. It was a captivating game on Tuesday night. United coming from behind to finish 4-3 winners over Liverpool. Goals from Ethan Wheatley, Jace Fitzgerald, Ethan Williams and James Scanlon. And a record-breaking winning run in the league is now extended to 14 games with 46 goals scored and only 10 conceded. It's particularly impressive, as I've said a few times on this podcast, because of the number of players used and the changes made each week. There were several real moments of quality on display against Liverpool, including Ethan Wheatley's inventive takedown in the box and a really clever volley. Not the kind of goal you often see, but I think most important in that performance was United's intensity throughout the game while Liverpool tired late on. And a similar trend was on show. I was at Carrington on Saturday morning to watch United against Arsenal in the Under-18 Premier League Cup quarter-final. Goals came from Jack Kingdon, Ethan Williams, a double, and Louis Jackson in a 4-2 win. United showed better fitness, had more high-quality options off the bench and adapted well to the game. It finished 2-2 in normal time. United scored twice in extra time and managed the final minutes perfectly. They really frustrated Arsenal, so much so that the Gunners' left-back was sent off for an out-of-control challenge, a second booking that was clearly out of frustration. The best goal from United's perspective came from Ethan Williams, his second. It was somewhat similar to Rasmus Hojlund's against West Ham, actually, with a little less venom in the strike, but the way that he was taking on a couple of defenders and shifted it from either foot and finished from about the edge of the box. So that was a really impressive goal. In loan news, the following players are all out on loan now, and I'll read through them to remind you. Sonny Al-Joffrey at Altrincham, Reece Bennett, Stockport County, Alvaro Fernandez at Benfica, Will Fish at Hibernia, Dan Gore, Port Vale, Joe Hugo, Burton Albion, Sam Mather, Rochdale, Sam Murray, Rochdale, Maxi Oyedelli, Forest Green Rovers, Radek Vitek, the goalkeeper at Accrington Stanley, and another goalkeeper, Tom Worcester at Macclesfield. Al-Joffrey, Sam Mather, Sam Murray and Tom Worcester are all on what they're calling non-traditional loans. Basically, they're registered with these clubs to complement appearances for the under-21s because there are only 9 guaranteed games left in the under-21s Premier League 2. There's a potential of 17 in the National League. This is something that Joe Hugill and Maxi Oyedelli did something similar at Altrincham last year. They're now out on full loans elsewhere. So I would expect Mather and Al-Joffrey especially to get full loans next season because they've been developing well. So this is good preparation for them. Coming up this week, the under-21s take on Southampton in a Friday 7pm kickoff in Premier League 2. And the under-18s travel to Derby County, a midday Saturday kickoff, both games live on MUTV. The final thing to go through is a departure, actually. Isak Hansen-Aaroen, who's 19, left United to join Werder Bremen on deadline day. And there was plenty of attention around this because he's a highly rated player and a lot of people would have seen him in the under-21s. He's an entertaining player, so I thought I'd run you through some context. I did this on Twitter. I thought I'd run you through it as well. He basically arrived at United in a summer of 2020. It was a summer of high-profile youth transfers that included Alejandro Garnacho, Willy Cambuala, Marc Jurado, Radek Vitek, Joe Hugo and Charlie McNeil. You'll recognise almost all of those names. In United We Stand back in 2023, I wrote, Dangor is carbon fibre. Isak Hansen-Aaroen can weave the highest quality silk. His passing between the lines is excellent in all of timing, vision and execution. Kobbie Mainoo is Ten Hag's favourite. Of that, there is no doubt, but the other two have a chance at United. And I did think Hansen-Aaroen had a chance at United, but he's a difficult kind of player to bring through. And there have been other issues. We'll get onto that. But United worked very hard to sign Hansen-Aaroen, so this decision didn't come lightly. They beat Liverpool, Everton, Juventus and Bayern Munich to his signature. The club travelled to his home in northern Norway. The family are very touched by that effort. They were also touched by Christmas cards sent to their home and by calls from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Ole and his mum would often chat, and Isak remembered his mum always being in charge of the conversation. And that relationship with Solskjaer developed when Isak came over for trials or for training before his official move. Ole would invite him for dinner to help him settle in. But then, like Garnacho and Willy Kambala, Hansen-Aaroen then signed for United during COVID, which made things hard to settle with bubbles and distancing. He actually went back to Norway for a few months at one point, but he did eventually settle and then flourished. He was key in the 2022 FA Youth Cup win. You'll probably remember some of his performances there alongside Dangor and Kobbie Mainoo. There were three very talented midfielders, and at the time, and I think what most people would have seen, everyone would have seen that in the final, Kobbie Mainoo was the gem in a very good generation. But Hansen-Aaroen is a really, really nice player to watch. So why is he leaving United? Well, reports suggest there were continued disagreements on a new contract. His agent's Jim Solbakken, who's fairly aggressive in negotiations. That partly explains why Dangor and Omari Forson have been given chances when Hansen-Aaroen was not. The other context that's necessary is United have been stung by working hard to develop players before and only getting compensation when they leave on a free, aged 19 to 21. They clearly thought Hansen-Aaroen wasn't going to sign a new deal, so they've made sure he's left before so that they can get something, a fee from Wolfsburg higher than compensation, but also add-ons and crucially a sell-on clause as well. So it definitely makes sense. He's a really fun player to watch and hopefully he does well in Germany. Excitingly, his departure opens up a regular spot in United's under-21s team and possibly in first-team training as too. So there's a big opportunity there for someone younger to start getting those chances. Perhaps Jack Fletcher, who's progressing well since his summer move from City. Perhaps a mixture of these young players because there's a really nice generation coming through in the under-16s, 17s and 18s at the moment. So one of those will get the opportunities that Hansen-Aaroen was being given, which is fantastic. Okay, Jack, let's have Guess the Player Clue 3. Then we'll have a quick update on United women and then we'll preview Aston Villa away.
Okay, so Clue 3 is... So you've already texted me and got it right, which we'll reveal afterwards. The final clue is, I was given my debut for Man United under David Moyes, and I later played for two other clubs that he has managed, although he was not my manager while I played there.
Good clue.
So I was given my debut at Man United by David Moyes, and I would later play for two other clubs that he has managed, but he was not my manager while I was there.
Yeah, good clue. I'm pleased I got this first time, because I know you were trying to trick me with Jadon Sancho.
Well, we talked about this player last week, and I was trying to somehow sneak a clue in that you might not get.
You know what's mad?
Please reveal. Go on.
I forgot about that. No, we'll reveal it right at the end to give people some thinking time. I'd forgotten that that we'd spoken about that, so I'm even more pleased. All right. Quick update on Manchester United women, who notched a second consecutive victory with a 2-0 win over Brighton and Hove Albion at home at Lee Sports Village on Sunday lunchtime. And another brace from Nikita Paris. 2 first-time efforts, 1 in each half, both set up by the irresistible Geza Ferreira. Nikita Paris has 8 goals in the WSL now and is United's top goal scorer. And victory keeps United just in touch of the top 3 and restores calmness after a turbulent few weeks. United beat Aston Villa 2-1 a week ago and now Brighton 2-0. That followed defeats to Manchester City away, Chelsea away and Liverpool at home. Elsewhere in the league, Arsenal suffered a shock defeat to bottom half West Ham. 5th and 6th place, Liverpool and Spurs drew, leaving United 5 points ahead of them both. The Reds are 4 points behind 3rd place Arsenal, with City 3 ahead of them, and 3 further ahead of them are leaders Chelsea. United won't win the league. That much has been clear for some time, unlike last season where they challenged. As things stand, top 3 is unlikely, but these 2 wins help. My prediction at the moment will be no, very unlikely, but with Arsenal slipping up, let's see. Okay, Jack, Aston Villa on Sunday. We had a question in the Patron Q&A saying, talking about the exciting things of the Wolves and West Ham games and saying this is excitingly sustainable. And we kind of cast our doubts on that. It's exciting, but I don't know if it's sustainable, particularly with the news about Martinez. Villa haven't been quite as consistent in the last few weeks, but can be electric in the way they play. They have players who I think match up against ours quite well in terms of the damage that they can cause in Douglas Luiz and Ollie Watkins and a few others. Are you confident for this? I'm not particularly.
No, I'm not, to be perfectly honest. I obviously have some bad memories of going to Villa Park last season. That was sort of actually a real turning point for our season. We got played off the park pretty comprehensively against Villa and then went on a really long unbeaten run, obviously hoping this time that we can just win at Villa Park. I mean, Villa themselves are in a little bit of a strange run of form, really. They had a couple of 0-0 draws, then lost to an injury-ravaged Newcastle team, but then put 4 past Sheffield United inside half an hour at the weekend. So it's a little bit up and down for them at the moment. I think they're a team that can be got at, as we saw in the game at Old Trafford. You know, we had about 55 offsides in the first half, but then eventually got our act together and managed to put some fairly easy balls over the top, which I think will be how Ten Hag looks to attack them. I expect this to be a game where we don't see too much controlled possession. Villa are a very good pressing team. I don't think we, especially without Martinez, are going to have the ability to continue to keep the ball under that kind of pressure. But I think you'll see us look to go long with diagonals over the top and stretch Villa's defence and take advantage of their high line.
Going to have to be clinical. We spoke earlier that Garnacho, the part of the reason that we didn't throw this game against West Ham away compared to Wolves, I know we ended up winning, but we kind of did throw it away only for Mainoo to save the day. But Garnacho was clinical with his second finish. Hojlund was obviously with a just unbelievably good goal. I think you're right that possession won't be there in great deals and chances won't be there in great deals, so you need to finish well. The hope is, with Rashford having scored this week and with Garnacho having scored a couple and with Hojlund having scored a couple, that's you've got some proper confidence there, and so you'd back us to now start finishing much better than we have been before.
Yeah, and also a little bit more confidence that we will create chances through other means against Villa. I still do think that going long over the top will be our main source of getting forward here, but I think what you've seen over the last few weeks is that, albeit, you know, 2 of these games have been against Wigan and Newport, but you've started to see United create more from structured attacking phases. That was something we really struggled with, and it felt like for half the season pretty much our only route to goal was transitions. That has changed to some degree. It feels like we are starting to get better. I think Garnacho has been a big part of that, him playing on the right. So I do think that United can have some success here, but I'm also worried about what's coming the other way, because in, you know, Bailey, Watkins, Douglas Luiz in midfield, John McGinn gets forward really well. Also the threat from fullback. Yeah. You know, Villa have
I'd not be surprised with another high-scoring game.
Yeah, not at all.
Which feels kind of the modus operandi for United at the moment is score a few, but
it's funny how much that's changed.
I know, yeah, it's crazy.
You know, we had 4 games without scoring. Yeah. We've now scored 19 in 7, but also conceded 11 in those 7 games.
Yeah, and still got negative goal difference in the Premier League, which is extraordinary. Yeah. In terms of team, Martinez injured, of course, but unchanged apart from that, you would expect.
Yeah, I think so. I don't see any real reason to change.
And we talked about this a little in the Patreon Q&A, but in terms of replacing Martinez, Shaw is kind of the closest copy in terms of that ability to play out. But is that what you'd go with here? I think I was saying that when Malassi is back, that's probably something you'd go for. But at the moment, you could do with Shaw on the left because he makes Rashford a much better player. And yeah, do you want him there against this Aston Villa attack against someone like Ollie Watkins? Possibly not.
No, I think I'd go probably Maguire and... Well, I was going to say Maguire and Varane, but it actually wouldn't surprise me if it's Maguire and Lindelof, because Ten Hag seems to, of the right-footed centre-backs that we have, Ten Hag seems to trust Lindelof the most to play on the left side at left centre-back. I personally would keep Shaw at left-back in this game. As much as I think Shaw is very, very good at left centre-back, I think what you lose by having, let's say, Dalot at left-back and then Wan-Bissaka at right-back is more than what you gain from having Shaw over Lindelof, for example, at left centre-back.
Although the benefit of Dalot at right-back from Ten Hag's perspective is that ability to play midfield. But in this game, away from home against the quick Aston Villa side, maybe he might like Wan-Bissaka's quality on transition and tackling ability effectively, which is his main thing. So I think generally the team picks itself with aside from that one replacement, which is a relief after many weeks of it not doing so and us getting 2 injuries per game. So just the one this time, which is a small improvement. Can you reveal the answer to Guess the Player, please? Or I can reveal it for you.
Yeah, go on then.
So the answer is, and I'd completely forgotten that we promised this would happen at the end of last week's episode, but the player who's been on loan to Borussia Dortmund, the player who was given his debut by David Moyes in 2013, and then, I'm trying to remember all the clues here, and then played for 2 clubs also managed by David Moyes, but not under David Moyes, and the player who scored his only international goal against England at the 2018 World Cup is Adnan Januzaj. So for the second week in a row, I said it felt like we often ended episodes talking about Adnan Januzaj, and I've manifested it. It's come true. But yeah, I
knew that
player.
you would get Januzaj very quickly, but I was hoping that I might be able to sneak that Borussia Dortmund one.
What's really strange is I didn't even think about Jadon Sancho, which is kind of an apt summary of his United career. But for some reason, I guess probably in my subconscious, I had remembered last week's conversation, just forgotten it at the front of my brain. But so when he said on loan to Borussia Dortmund, I thought immediately Adnan Januzaj. And then I had to remember if that had actually happened or not, because it kind of slipped away. But yeah, great player for a season or 2, and a litany of amazing songs about him, which I have very fond memories of singing all of in Donostia San Sebastian at Real Sociedad away, going through the whole Adnan Januzaj songbook after United had won but gone out of the Champions League. So yeah, good player. Anyway, that's all we have time for. We've been talking for a long time, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. For more for the week, you can find Jack on Twitter at
UTD Tait, Tait.
And you can join me at Harry Robertson64 and the podcast itself at UTD Weekly Pod. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever you listen on. It's really helpful for growing the listenership, which is always good for us. But otherwise, have a fantastic week. Enjoy the game against Villa on Sunday, and we'll speak to you very soon. Goodbye.
Podcast Network.